Welcome to the Catholic Psych Show. Today we're talking about consensual nudity on the X platform. We'll be talking about graduate numbers decreasing and what our response is to that as Catholic Psych.
We have a
We have time.
response.
We have a response, yes. And we'll potentially talk about a comedy show at the Vatican and other stories. And maybe at the end, if we have nothing else to talk about, which is highly unlikely, we'll dig into the mailbag. We're starting to get an accumulation of issues in our mailbag. We'll probably have to just do a full mailbag episode soon, but if there's time at the end, maybe we'll dive into there. Dr. Greg, welcome back from the Congo. How was your trip?
Thank you. The Congos was amazing.
What kind of wildlife did you encounter there?
Man, I was down with the armadillos and the cowboys.
Armadillos in the Congo?
I was in the heart of Texas.
Oh, my bad. I must have confused you with someone else. So Texas
you thought
was
I was
good?
in the Congo?
I mean, I lost track, really.
Who was in the Congo?
I thought I had to pick you up from prison this morning. I was coming up with different places that you were visiting all last week.
Remember, wasn't that a Michael Crichton book? Did you ever read that book?
Congo, yeah.
Yeah, that was great. Remember the monkeys? They could smash heads with rocks. That was. I should not have been reading that at the young age. I did.
Michael Crichton was on fire then, though. It was all Jurassic Park was everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was in Texas. Texas was hot. It was great. I love Texas. We were at Texas A&M, Aggie Land. So
okay.
College Station, which is in pretty much the middle of nowhere, except it's in the middle of Aggie Land. So you go there for one thing and one thing only, and unless it's the Campus Ministry Association conference being held at
yes
at Texas A&M.
Yes.
And no, it was wonderful. We launched our first aid workshop, which was great. It's called Prepared. We're gonna have information coming out soon about that. And met with great people, saw some awesome people there, and here we are, back to the grind, back to the normal New England daily show.
It's a good time of year to be back in the grind, though. It's not like it's cold winter, right? Weather's been popping.
I love Connecticut right now. It's like the best. It's like 60 overnight.
Yeah.
And then, you open your windows, you get that really nice fresh air going through the house. And then it maybe, goes up to like 80, 85. That's the worst part of the mid-afternoon heat, but then it comes back down again. So
get those allergies coming in.
Yeah.
It's great.
Allergies, death virus, whatever is going through the house at the time.
Yes. Yes.
Well, so we got a lot of news stories going on.
Wait, but hold on. I want to talk about something first. You didn't ask me how I am. That's kind of self-centered of you.
No, I was just gonna say, but first I wanted to hear about your week. I wanted to hear about the show, the week, your experience of the show last week. Well, if you want to talk about something else, you can, but
I do. I want to get to something else very quickly, but the show is great.
How'd the Celtics do?
2-0 in the finals. 2-0. Right. We're looking at Banner 18 coming up. We got to hang in there. Hopefully, Porzingis is healthy, but that's for another show. The show was great. We had some guests come in. We had Stephanie Muncie sub in for you. We had Jack Beers come in twice, and Dr. Jordan McNicholas twice.
Nice.
And it was fun. It was fun to just rotate, bring new people in, and offer slightly different angles into these issues and the issues of the day. So it was fun.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
What were you gonna ask? How?
I was just curious about the responses, but I knew you said we're going to talk about the mailbag a little bit later, so we'll get to.
We talk about Trump, Biden, the Pope. We upset everybody. It's classic stuff.
Oh, good. By the way, I was going to make a joke about the Vatican has comedy hour at the Vatican. Isn't it always comedy hour at the Vatican?
Yes, it is.
Oh boy.
We'll talk about that after. But no, the thing I want to talk about, this is not like product placement. Nobody. We're not advertising and getting any ad revenue from this show. But if Z Sleep was to offer to make a deal with us, I would seriously consider it, because I've got this new Z Sleep thing to help with sleep apnea and snoring. Have you heard of this thing before?
Z Sleep?
Yes. Have you heard of this?
No.
So when we had my daughter about 2 years ago in the hospital, I had fallen asleep in the hospital room, and the nurse came in, and apparently, like I was causing a 7.5 on the Richter scale earthquake with my snoring, and she was like, "He has sleep apnea and he needs help." And my wife Teresa's long told me that I stopped breathing for periods of time in the over the course of the evening, and I snore
Is
pretty
there a
loud.
pillow she's holding over your head at the moment?
No, not anymore.
Okay.
Good news.
I don't know what happened. He stopped breathing in the middle of the night.
Right. Not anymore. So I didn't want to put on the Darth Vader mask. I've been just like reluctant to go and get the CPAP thing. Like I don't have to sleep stuck like this forever. But I've heard of this miracle alternative, right? We love alt. We love alt medicine, right? And it's basically like it's called Z Sleep, where it's almost like a mouth guard like that athletes use. They put in their mouth, but it's just like there's no, like, it's not closed off. There's an opening in the middle, and you stick it back, and it forces your jaw forward.
Oh, it
Because
moves your jaw
apparently,
forward. Yeah.
sleep apnea. There's like this muscle in the back that when you sleep, your jaw goes backwards and it relaxes and it closes the airway. So this thing pushes your mouth forward. I haven't snored in 3 nights.
Yeah, that's great. You got to be careful with that. Does it shift does it like pull on your teeth?
A little bit.
Yeah, so my dad's a dentist.
Oh boy.
And we've had similar family issues with snoring and sleep, but those over time will start to change, apparently, according to the professional.
Like braces, right?
Well, yeah, but like not the way that you want it to go. It'll like start shifting your teeth around. So that was what he said. It's a temporary. It's a good fix, but if you use it long term, it starts to move your teeth around.
Okay. Well, I could feel it. Like I remember what it felt like to have braces as a kid. You know, when you first get them real tightened up. Anyway, it's been great.
I hate to blow up your solution there, but be careful.
I'll be careful.
Here's a quick story. I used to snore. Sometimes I snore. When I was a friar, we would put our heads down. You know, sometimes you go into this like a cocoon prayer posture in Holy Hour. And there was a couple of times I started to fall asleep in Holy Hour. I was kind of known for that, and I would snore, which is super embarrassing. A brother would poke me, wake me up, and so I started training myself with my head down on the floor in front of me, curled up like that on my knees.
Like in the fetal position?
Yeah, it's sort of like in a fetal prayer position, like in front of the Blessed Sacrament, and I would tuck my teeth forward. So that, and I would just like lean against my head that way, and then I wouldn't snore if I fell asleep.
How does that help me in a bed now?
No, it doesn't help. It's just a dumb story.
Okay, great. Well, it's the same principle, right?
Father Luke Layton he's an old friend from my class, and anytime he's around, he makes sure to tell my kids that I was always falling asleep in Holy Hour. He gives me a hard time for that. I was known for that. So my kids know that now.
That's good. All right. Should we jump into the stories?
Let's do it.
All right. So let's talk about X. So the platform X, formerly known as Twitter, now allows consensual adult nudity on its platform. Consensual adult nudity. The platform will still prohibit pornographic content that is exploitative, non-consensual, or promotes objectification. That's interesting. We can just unpack that statement, right? If it's objectification, it's not allowed. Obscene behaviors or the sexualization or harm to minors. Oh, I guess that was just a statement about minors. He's not saying that sex outside their marital
objectification of adult people is okay.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
It also prevents adult content from being used for profile pictures, banners, and other publicly visible places. So it won't just be in your face at first glance. The company defines adult content as any depictions of full or partial nudity, including close-ups of genitals, buttocks, or breasts. X is urging. So they have the urge. X is urging accounts that regularly post adult content on the platform to adjust their media settings to automatically add a content warning to their posts. So it's not even a rule. It's just they're strongly encouraged to put like an explicit.
I mean, I just don't get it. Was this like a requested feature? Like, is this what people want?
This is the big picture. It's about freedom of speech for Elon. That's what this is about.
But at what point, like, what normal people are considering this an act of censorship?
What normal people are considering this an act of censorship?
To block nudity.
I don't know how to understand your question. Are there normal people that are saying we don't want the nudity?
Are there normal, reasonable people who are just regular Americans, and they're like,
yes,
we really, we love X, and we just, we really love free speech. Would really put this over the top. If we really want to be free about this, we should be able to have nudity anywhere we look on our phone app.
No, I don't think there's like a grounds. Well, I don't know.
It's really a strike against freedom of speech if we don't have nudity showing up on our phones while we're scrolling through.
Right. I don't think there's a groundswell movement to push for nudity on X. I think it's more like in his ideology, which on the one hand, conservatives can appreciate because it's now giving a space for a more balanced viewpoint in the world of social media on this platform that was not formerly there under Twitter or is not currently there on other social media platforms. So in the name of free speech, we allow more of a diversity of perspective. So that's good. Right. And people, I think he tends to lean right himself. So people are all about, conservatives are all about X. But I think he's so locked into this ideology of freedom of speech where anything is allowed to be spoken. I mean, I don't know if hate speech is allowed, but any kind of expression of self or almost any expression of self is something that Elon wants to protect. And from his perspective, this includes sexual expression.
Well, this is what I'm saying. I mean, first of all, he's off his rocker on a number of levels. That's no question.
Yes.
I mean, he's an advocate for like mental health awareness. Like, we definitely need to just have reverence for how troubled some people are in this world. And then when you have power and money mixed in with that's a recipe for disaster. But what we have right now, like the definition of free speech, why are we not concerned about the changing of words? Like, he's all about man and woman, and he doesn't, he's not into all the trans stuff because they're basically forcing your definition on somebody else. Like, he just changed the definition of speech. Apparently, speech now includes images. So now we're going to change the definition of to speak. Apparently, to speak now it means to look, and we could just change those definitions if we want to. And so, freedom of speech was always very clearly separated from flashing pornographic pictures in front of anybody who might be scrolling through.
And it's so tricky. It's not that it's flashed, but it's more like if there's something that interesting to you, it'll show up in the comments and the replies. Like there'll be some kind of bot or some kind of like OnlyFans girl.
I got pulled into one of these things. I saw it by accident, and it was
yes.
And honestly, I'm curious how much it's actually happening because it literally only happened once. But I was looking at comments on some post, and it was like some political thing, completely non, sexual or anything like that. And then there's a comment that had a blurred out picture, and I hadn't heard of this. So, and they trigger stuff, and they're like, "This is sensitive content" or whatever. I was like, "Oh, I wonder what inflammatory comment
statement
made
to
this post." So then you're like, "Oh, I want to see what somebody said." So I clicked show the post or whatever. And I was like, what is that? And it was like, hide the post. And you can hide it right away.
Yeah.
And I was like, what just happened?
I've had it where there's not even a warning. It's like, it'd be something like, I don't know, like top 10 actresses in the last 50 years. And like Julia Roberts is like the first picture. And like, I love Julia Roberts. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Who do they think the best actresses are? And it's like the algorithm will say like, well, if you're interested at looking at a picture of Julia Roberts, like we're going to show you this as well. It's like you click on Julia Roberts, then it's like, boom, graphic nudity right in your face.
Well, all yeah. So this is the thing that I hate about social media. It's all built on algorithms. It's all
Yeah,
built on brain uh, manipulation. It's all
yeah,
hacking people's neurological systems. And if we know what hits dopamine, and obviously, like at mass, the grand sort of estimate of algorithm over large numbers of people, you're going to have people who are obviously triggered by and clicking on all of these pornographic things. And the
yes,
whole thing skews towards the most base animal, non-thinking, non-discerning understanding of humanity.
yeah. Another thing comes to my mind too is, you know, social media in general to keep views and keep eyes and keep you on the platform consists of content that is distressing, right? It makes you anxious or it makes you angry.
Right.
And so when you're feeling anxious and angry and like there's an alternative coping mechanism to that, if these are heightened, like well, I mean, we can go into a much bigger topic here, right? About how like anxiety is a reflection of disconnection from God, ultimately a consequence of the fall, and
Yes.
like the best response to anxiety is communion and connection to other people. Like pornography is a watered down version of that, right? It's like
Yes.
it's a terrible expression, distorted expression of what we're really longing for. So when we feel the angst and the anxiety, or any individual feels that, we want to connect with other people as a way to alleviate that. So if you're making people anxious and angry on social media, and then you put some kind of comfort right next to it, the neurological draw to get sucked into that is amplified
Right.
just by virtue of it being alongside that content which makes you stressed or angry.
Right.
So it's even worse. It's even more insidious.
Right. I mean, I think like the anybody listening right now, you're on social media. If you're not using screen time on your phone
Mm.
to measure on a weekly basis your use of social media, maybe you didn't know that you had this tool, but now you know. And if you know and you don't use the tool, you're actively choosing to waste your life away on social media. We're not anti-technology, but we are going to use the technology appropriately.
And
And
we're
if you
not
have
anti-social media.
what's that?
And we're not anti-social media. Well, at least I'm not anti-social media.
Not I may be classified as such. I may be found to identify as anti-social media at some point
He said on social media. Go on.
in some way. So I
Yeah.
do this begrudgingly most of the time. If But if you want to be excellent in your life, if you want to excel in business, if you want to excel in your prayer life, if you want to excel in your hobbies, if you're an artist, if you're a student, if you're doing anything that's worth anything, and you are not checking your screen time on a weekly basis, you are wasting your time. That's just what
Mm,
it comes down to. There's there's
mm.
there's no like I don't we talk I can't even articulate how many people or like, how do you do mindfulness? Like, I don't have time for these exercises. I don't have time to do all this stuff. And then let me look at your phone. Let me look at your screen time app on your phone. How in the world do you have 6 hours this week to look at Instagram, but you
Mm.
don't have 10 minutes a day for a mindfulness exercise?
Let's get a time audit. How do you budget your time?
This is what it
Dr.
comes down
Greg,
to.
Dr. Greg, watch your time audit. If you don't have time for mindfulness, you got to send it in.
That's it. Like, I'm sorry. Like, there's only so much I can do here. It's like, can write the book, can make the program, can record the
Yeah.
videos. I can spend
Yeah.
endless amounts of time, money, energy, resources, and trying to help people. And I just can't stop you from using social media. Like,
It
you have
sucks
to
you in.
engage your will at some point. That's the dignity of the human person. You have freedom that God gave you. And you have to be able to, like, click the other button on your phone, go to settings, look up screen time, and find
Yeah.
out how much time you're actually using looking at your social media.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know that it is actually designed to keep you there. So you have to have not just trust in your will to just pull yourself out of it in a given moment, because everyone is susceptible to getting sucked in.
Yes.
But to have like external constraints to help you pull yourself out.
Yeah,
An
that's why.
alarm, whatever it is, behavioral constraints.
And that knowing the screen time is part of that. It's like, let's set up for success. Let's use the technology. Like, we can't just white knuckle against dopamine addictions to keep scrolling. You're not going to win that battle.
No.
But if you learn about the dopamine addiction and dopamine triggers, and if you learn about your screen time app, and you learn about alarms on your phone that you can set to check your screen time, and then if you you could use AI now. You can automate the whole process. It's amazing. You could have a chat GPT assistant.
We love AI at the Catholic Psych Show.
All we want to do is talk about it.
All we want to do is talk about AI.
But all of this, all of these are God-given tools. This is amazing. Like, all of these things are the fruition of our God's given creativity and intelligence, but we have to use the will, and we have to actually be intentional in how we get our control over it. It's got to be human controlled, not industry controlled, not tech controlled. All these corporations, they just need to make money. They just want to keep you scrolling. That's how they make money. They've cracked that code, and you can do something about it.
Now, everything you're saying, though, does not apply when I want to engage in Celtics Twitter the night after an NBA Finals game, and I just want to keep the dopamine from the game and the feelings I have from the Celtics winning. It's a very short period during the year. If we sweep, it's only 4 nights that I stay up later than I should.
Listen, that's totally fine. If you are in control of choosing to do that. You had that conversation with your wife. Your wife knows.
You wonder why she's got the pillow. Right, she got the pillow over my head. I don't have sleep apnea.
It's. Did you already discuss and negotiate how you're gonna have that time, or is she coming after you with the pillow because maybe you just didn't even tell her this is what you're gonna be doing for the 2 hours after the game? She was like,
"Oh, sleep's not that important to you? Let's see how important sleep is."
Time for Z sleep.
Yes. I'll give you a Z sleep.
So listen, be careful. This is what it comes down to. Buyer beware and consumer forewarned. If you guys are on X, just look out for those blurry pictures. Scroll right past them.
I want to look even bigger picture here, though, because I just want to talk about trust in institutions. We are Catholic Psych Institute, and I want to talk about where we are situated in this bigger picture as well. But just, I've long felt like the challenge of pushing back against a culture that's at least promotes values that are inconsistent with ours, if not hostile to our Catholic values, right? And there's a whole culture, and that's been reflective in the world of social media and Hollywood, oftentimes in politics. And so when Elon Musk bought X, I was like, and I actually started to see content which was consistent with my values. I was like, this is great. I was like, finally, I can exhale. There's a place where I can feel like there's a counterpoint to my experience among other people.
Yeah.
And then eventually this gets soiled as well.
Yeah.
And it's just like a constant kind of like whiplash and reminder that no matter what, you cannot put your trust, all of your trust in an institution. I'm not saying I would explicitly say that before this, but unconsciously I felt the relief in being like, oh, I can go on X and just read the news or find things that I'm interested in and not have some kind of leftist political agenda shoved down my throat. Not that I want to expose myself to liberal views. I want to learn their perspective, but not shoved down my throat and not at the expense of any kind of conservative views. And I was just felt so much relief in that. But here we are, sooner or later, this institution comes up problematic as well. It reminds me, we were talking about this last week when you were gone. We were talking about how there are these celebrities now who fashion themselves as liberals historically. And then the liberal viewpoint has gotten so far left that they find themselves as moderates now. So this institution, this political institution that they once trusted in with all of themselves has now in a way betrayed them. So whether it's Jerry Seinfeld, whether it's Bill Maher, I just saw Rob Schneider did a comedy set and he was asked to leave, and some institution distanced themselves from his misogynistic, transphobic humor and all this other stuff. So it's no matter what, no matter where you are, You cannot put all of your trust in something because that thing is going to shift. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think this is, and this is of course going to sound inflammatory, and you're going to feel like this might sound extreme, but I'm going to break this down to show how reasonable it is. This is why I feel like it's really, really important that we as an institute are not a media company.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had this discussion in like strategy meetings and big picture kind of,
Sure.
reviews. Media today, by definition, needs to be divisive.
Sure.
So it doesn't matter what if you're talking about media institutions,
Mm-hmm.
it's by definition not to be trusted. It's you have to think about what is the underlying premise of their existence. And an institution that exists as a company which
To make
makes money
Yes.
based on being divisive
Right.
has to be, therefore, always filtered through that lens.
Yes.
And I've seen this so many times with, like, let's go back to like Fox News, or now it's Daily Wire or X.
Yeah.
It's like, these are not to be trusted as organizations, as institutions that are upholding the idea of what institution is supposed to be. These
Not
are
full trust. Not full trust. Discerning trust, I think.
So if we kind of break down, I've been talking about this book here and there, but I think it's a really important book by Monsignor Shea from University of Mary, and he talks about institutions in this book, and he says that we need to actually rediscover the true meaning of institute. And today, institute has become this idea of like, it's this bureaucracy and it's red tape and it's all these difficult things. But he said, really, in its purest form, an institution is a form of community. It's meant to be communio,
which is
and
governed
really,
by a certain set of rules,
right? And it's
to enforce values.
And ultimately, it's what the church is supposed to be. It's the institution of the church,
right?
And so we have this media culture that we live in, which is by definition divisive. And then that gets mixed with institution in our mindset. And I think what ends up happening is that people who are in institutions have become mediaized, for lack of a better word. They've been enculturated into this media ethos, which is now personal brands, personal statements. Now we look for everything through this lens of the media. And it's like, who's right, who's wrong? And now we look at the Church Institute through that same lens. Or we look at individuals like Pope Francis through that lens. And instead of realizing that we've been enculturated by and brainwashed and indoctrinated by the mediaization of our culture, and now we are thinking like that in terms of the way we look at everything else, we need to actually go in the reverse. So we can trust the church institution as the body of Christ, and of course it's not perfect as it's human, but we should think differently about our humanity and what we're living for and whom we place our trust. And then we can look at everything through that lens. So media should be relegated to the category of entertainment.
Yes.
So pure entertainment.
Pure entertainment.
And that means carve out a little space for it. No problem. How much of your life are you spending in entertainment? Like, should maybe 5% of your waking hours, you can decide like, okay, my day is worth 5% of my time. I need a little carve out for entertainment. No problem. That's wonderful. That's part of our life. That's our humanity. I don't think most people think that way. And I think most people look to the media and these institutions, quote unquote, as the source of truth, current events, what's going on in the world, how am I supposed to live my life? It's a new ethic. It's a new ethos. It's the blending of entertainment with news. And not only that, but the deeper ethic of like, how am I supposed to live my day? How am I supposed to live my life? It's like, oh, I just saw it on Fox News. This new study came out and they said that I'm supposed to, eat beets. And if I eat a lot of beets, then I stop eating carrots and I make sure I only exercise this way, then this is going to make my kids healthier. And it's like, oh, that's how I have to run my life now. That's now what I'm doing. I've now done this diet.
Well, those are silly because they change like every day.
But people believe it.
I know.
And they're living their lives by these entertainment stories. Instead, if it was like, you know what, I need a little mental break. I need to check out here for 20 minutes. I'm going to just, I'm going to watch some sports. I'm going to watch some commentary on sports. I'm going to watch a news story. I'm going to see what, when I travel, I love to put on Fox News.
Yeah.
We don't have like cable, so we don't ever watch any of the syndicated networks. And so if I'm staying at a hotel or something like that, and like,
you just want to check in with what
I'll put on a little Hannity. I put on a little Hannity at night for like a half hour, or I forgot the other shows, but anyways, it's like, it's just fun. Yeah, it's like, let's see how absurdly ridiculous this like conservative angle is right now. Sometimes I'll put on CNN and I'll check out the other side too, but it's entertainment. That's where we have to keep it. We have to stop trusting it for anything.
Yes. I have, as you're talking, it reminded me of one of the news sources that I get my news from. It's called The Pour Over, Pour, The Pour Over. And so it had a little blurb today about how a recent poll found that 47% of adults say that civil war is either likely or very, very likely in their lifetime. A civil war. 47% of adults. Went on to say a separate poll found that around 90% of Americans are sometimes, often, or always exhausted and angry when they think about politics. Now, what I love about the Pour Over is they try as hard as they can, from their perspective, to give you facts of what's happening in an unbiased way, followed by some kind of scripture. And it says, it turns out that 24/7, 365 partisan news that seeks to stoke anger and fear creates anger and fear. However, concise, politically neutral news delivered 3 times a week, alongside reminders of God's promises and commands, creates peace and hope. So like, you'll hear this, you'll see like what's happening with like the Trump trial or whatever, and then it'll be like, right under, it'll be like Christ's words about like loving your neighbor, like right under it. And it really is like this. It like brings you down. Like the news riles you up, even when it's not with a partisan bent, but then like just access to what's happening in the world. What is selected is inflammatory. What is selected? So that's why I try to do like kind of silly stories in here sometimes. So we're not always talking about Trump and Biden or Israel or something, but what is selected drives up your anxiety and your angst and your anger. And then right afterwards, it's like, God loves you. Everything's going to be all right. Pray for those who persecute you. And it's such a nice balance. So that's my pitch. That's my second pitch today.
This is why I love doing what we're doing, because I don't like social media, but I like what we're doing because we're not trying, we're not going to go viral.
No.
Like we could spend 20 minutes now talking about how Macron in France, like he just dissolved the parliament and he's like redoing all their government and all this stuff. And it's like, and let's spend 20 minutes talking about why this is a biblical prophecy of the apocalypse. It's apocalyptic now. This is what's happening. These things are lining up. There was the red heifer in Jerusalem and they built
the altar. Those conversations though. You like to do
listen,
that.
I told you one time I did that.
You like apocalyptic conversations.
We are not. It's like, have you watched season 4 of The Chosen yet?
I started a couple episodes in, yeah.
So I've been watching it. We just started also. So we just watched episode 2 last night.
Mm-hmm.
And this is such a tangent, but I think it's related. We do a lot with real estate. Mm-hmm. And we've had like some really amazing timing and luck, and we put in a lot of elbow grease, and we've done a lot, and we've actually like made some really amazing moves, my wife and I. Mm-hmm. And we're in the middle of a situation right now that is fairly stress inducing, and really like a bunch of things are going sideways. And you're obviously not going to share any details, but there's some people involved that are making it go that way.
Sure.
And it's been like a very deep spiritual battle for me to like trust, and then get angry, and then have like mafia parts that pop up with ideas in my head about certain things.
Those are my favorite parts.
The ones you love to hear about.
Mhm.
And then there was this episode last night, and it was about Peter forgiving Matthew, and Jesus just broke it down for him. And he was like, and Peter's like, but this is what he made me go through, and my taxes, and I was going to lose my business, and my wife was going to suffer. And Jesus is like, and then what happened in the morning? And that's when I showed up and I told you to put your nets out, and you caught all that fish, and it solved all the problems.
Like that.
It was like that. And it was like, God, it was such a good answer to my prayers right now. And just realizing that like God has this in his hands, and no matter what I think. And Peter's like, well, it's pretty hard. And Jesus is like, I know it's hard. And he's like, and you know, when men think that they have all the answers and they can do it their way, they make it even harder. And
Yes.
so my point is, I woke up this morning and did a quick scroll through on X, and I saw this thing about France, and then somebody commented like things are lining up biblically for an apocalypse. And then it was like all these other things going on in Europe, and, you know, German elections and American stuff and all this stuff. It's like, what happens if everything goes sideways in the world while we're in the middle of this real estate transaction? And my anxiety went at DEFCON 10. And then, and then I remembered last night's episode, and then I thought about, you know, who I am and who God is. And then I was like, it's all going to be okay. And what a stupid news headline that I don't need to pay attention to right now. And thank God for our faith that we don't have to actually take these inflammatory media outlets seriously.
It's true. Here's a counter is the wrong word, but a reply to that kind of perspective. You're talking about, like, when we think of the example of Peter, and Peter was basically talking about the things of this world. You know, I was financially in ruin. I was dealing with all the stress. And then Jesus said, okay, and then the next day I took care of all that for you.
Yeah.
But we don't subscribe to the gospel of prosperity.
No, of course not.
So, but this is important, because I think there are people, I'm sure, that are listening to this that will say, yeah, but what about when I try and trust God with my finances and then I go bankrupt? And he says no to my prayers. When things don't work out in a worldly sense, like, we can't just give people the promise that, like, trust God and, like, whatever's happening.
No,
like,
the moral of that story is not that the financial things all work out.
No, I know,
That's
I
an
know
important
you're not,
point.
I know you're not saying that, but I think it's really important to nuance for those people who are living in a place of suffering in their life, where they feel like they're praying to God and he's not answering their prayers, or he's saying no, and the troubles of this world are compounding, and it becomes a crisis of faith.
No, it's really important, because it's not about this world at all. And that's the whole point. But it's like, where is our anxiety? And what are we actually worried about? Because then you look in the same episode, and the whole thing is about John getting beheaded. It's like, yeah, we're going to die. Like, and, you know, I was thinking about, it's like, for Peter, he doesn't even keep the business. It's not like he keeps fishing. It's not even about, like, him.
No.
It was all about just realizing that God has literally every event lined up in some way in his mind for us and for our good.
Yeah.
Whether it's to be prosperous or for it to all fall apart. Like, it actually doesn't matter. Like, right now also, you have
in any area of life, in health, in anything. It's not just about,
Exactly. Yeah, we have to, so you know, just reinforcing your original point here about scripture, at making sure to color everything that we think and do with the truth of our faith. Like, scripture's got to bring us back to the main point of our lives every day.
Yes.
So that we are actually spending more time thinking about the gospel and what we know by faith, instead of whatever X is scrolling in front of us, or whatever the news feed is, regardless.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking of how, when you said we're going to die, I was thinking of Tolkien, when he was asked about Lord of the Rings, and he said, well, I'm Catholic. So the whole thing is a long, slow tragedy. This is what our life is in a certain sense. If we only focus on the natural world and the natural experience of our lives, like it does end in death, and whatever success, whatever achievement, whatever gifts we have, all of that crumbles before the end, and it
I
results in
just,
death.
yeah, man, The Chosen. I can't talk enough about this, but John is really affecting me too. It's like his
John the Baptist.
John the Baptist, like his joy too,
Yeah,
and his peace, like even throwing a little humor in there in his beheading scene, and it's like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then afterwards when they were like, I wish we could have been prepared for this, and Andrew's like, we were. He told
Yeah,
us he came to prepare the way, and he did.
yeah.
His purpose is fulfilled. Like that's it. Like, what are we here for? What's our purpose? Our purpose is not to stay alive forever.
No.
Our purpose isn't to have worldly, prosperity and
Yes.
it's like, what's our purpose? That's what we should be focused on.
Yeah. And even when, I mean, all institutions will fail us. I mean, even members of the church will fail
Sure.
us. We have these scandals. We have all, I mean, not even it doesn't even have to be at the level of scandal, but just at the, like the interpersonal frustrations or difficulties that we can have with members of the church, but we trust not in the church as people. We trust in the church as his church.
Oh
And then
yeah.
we trust the teachings to be true. And that's where we can have our hope. And that's where we have to keep returning to the sacramental life,
Yeah.
scripture and tradition,
Yeah.
the three pillars of what we
Yeah.
believe.
Yeah. Amen.
So, all right. So don't worry about pornography on X. Let's move on.
Check. What's next?
All right. I want to talk about grad school.
Alrighty.
I want to talk about grad school. So, turns out that numbers of students attending grad school are down by a significant amount. So undergraduate numbers have fallen between 2010 and 2021, which I think is somewhat on people's minds as we're shifting away from this pressure and need to go to college that was present in our generation growing up. But during that time, graduate school enrollment grew by 9%. So I think the world of academia was focused on how can I make money? How can I make money by getting this degree? And if I can't make money, I'm not going to go to college. I don't know what I want to do yet. Therefore, I'm not going to get my undergrad. But graduate school historically has been like, okay, it's almost like job training. If I get to the undergrad, I know I can make money by going to graduate school. And the majors that people have been studying has shifted considerably. Some of my former liberal arts professors tell me that the student enrollment in those majors are way down. I was a history major. There was like 600 history students when I was at Central Connecticut. Now there's like 70 or something like that. And they're all going into the STEMs. They're all going to criminal justice. So people are thinking of college in terms of how can I make money? And graduate school was the one way out of that. But even graduate school numbers are down. They're down about 7%. And there's this fear among universities that their cash cow for existing, taking all this money from students through graduate programs, that's going to dry up. So all those graduate programs that universities rushed to add meant that even when graduate enrollment was going up, the number of students per program, and therefore the revenue from these programs was going down. The choice became: do I graduate school or do I go look at some of these very good opportunities? So students are looking at alternatives to graduate school. Many of them chose to pursue money instead of higher learning. They're just discovering that the higher learning institutions were not helping them make more money. And there's filled with a lot of fluff, a lot of baloney, and a lot of stuff that they didn't need. So, any reactions to this?
I have a lot of thoughts on this. Number one, you could see the influence of like Tim Ferriss, the 4-hour work week, and
Yep.
a lot of these, really entrepreneurial ways of being able to, just see differently, like what's your purpose, and if you want to make money, like there's different ways to do it. Take the cost of graduate school, put it into a fund,
Yep.
start playing with investing, and you'll learn more about investing that makes you more profitable by the time that you would have graduated graduate school with less cost than what graduate school would have cost.
Yes. My first reaction to that is not everyone is an entrepreneur.
No, but there's a lot of people who are. So you're cutting out those people now. They're thinking twice about it.
Yes.
Second of all, there's very few people who have any idea what they want to do with their life. And this is something I've been thinking a lot about too, because it's like, we do a lot of homeschooling, and we see a very big difference in the sort of quality of thinking and sort of ways of just processing, like rationally and discerning and thinking and being more mature amongst the homeschooling families and their kids that we know, and then like sort of what happens when you get processed through the regular school system.
Yeah.
And this is not saying one or the other. I'm just saying what we've noticed. But one of the specific sort of data points is how well like a 16-year-old who's been homeschooled actually knows themselves, or a 17-year-old versus somebody else that's like just going through the motions of the whole school system. And I've met people, very few people, and actually Teresa, your wife, comes to mind, who went to freshman year undergrad knowing who she was and what she wanted to do.
Yeah, it's rare though.
It's rare, but she built a plan based on what she wanted to become and what she wanted to do. And I tell kids all the time that I'm counseling, I'm like, take a year off, take 2 years off. Like, you don't have to stay in that conveyor belt production assembly line.
Yes.
And just because you're 18, you don't have to go to college right away. Like, spend some time, figure out who you are, what you want to do before you spend a ridiculous, ungodly amount of money because you're bought into this whole loan system, government loans and all this stuff. It's like...
And when you're 18, 19, you have no idea what that money means.
Of course not.
No clue.
You have no idea what the money means. You have no idea who you are. And then when we grew up, it was with a generation of parents from like the boomers to Gen Z, and they were, or Gen X, I mean, and it was like, this is what you have to do. Like, of course you have to go get a degree. Of course,
because a lot of them had not gone to college, and so they thought the way out of their particular plight would have been their lives would have been better had they gone to college. So that's why they pushed it so hard on their children.
Yeah, and then their children, our parents, are like, yeah, you're gonna work at GE for 40 years. Like, how are you gonna get that job? You're gonna get the entry level. You did it. It's like the world changed, but now all the kids have no idea what to do with what's changed, and their parents don't even know how it's changed, and nobody knows what's going on. So, I interviewed Lily McGibbon on our podcast, and it was a great episode. She was, I think, a sophomore at Notre Dame. She's a rising junior right now, and she's like articulate. She's like, this is what I want to do. This is why we're talking. This is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm doing the summer internship. This is very rare.
Yeah.
To have people so dialed in. So then you're getting these undergrad kids who shouldn't have been in undergrad in the first place. And then they're now at that next level. You have to
now what?
You got to re-up. You got to ante up again to do it a second time for grad school. Yeah. They're like, I am definitely not doing that. There's no reason to do that.
They were. For a long time, it was like, I need to double down on this investment I've made in education. So I need to pick something that will train me further so that I can make money.
Because the fantasy was still coherent enough that the undergrad was worth it. And then if it didn't seem like it was adding up, you're not totally suspicious of the educational system yet. Right. And so then you're like, well, maybe it's just because I didn't do the graduate degree. If I get the graduate degree...
The loans weren't due yet. That was the only reason.
Right. And the loans weren't due yet. Exactly. You're like, well, I can prolong the loans if I go back to school.
Yes.
I'll just so what if I'm adding to them because I'm setting myself up to make even more money, so that's going to be even better.
Yep.
And then it all smacks you in the face, and you realize it was a sham.
That's right. So the result is 7%. It's down 17%, and of U.S. residents are going to graduate school. The 7% down. Whereas it's 19, I don't understand the math behind this. Well, the number from other countries went up 19%. So students from other countries are coming here to go to graduate school, but Americans are not going to graduate school. Those numbers are going down.
Well, that's a whole nother conversation.
That is a whole nother conversation. But anyway, American residents are disillusioned with graduate school. So, what could we do to help?
Is there an alternative to graduate school where people could be trained and also prepared to make money for less money?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if those who know us, we're referencing our CPMAP program, our certification to provide mentorship to people. But I mean, in some ways, this vision of this was born out of our own frustrations with the graduate school process and our own student loans and those aspects of graduate school that we felt were unnecessary. And we saw the problem, and we've tried to establish an alternative route to graduate school.
No, it's true. Actually, I just saw one of our students, Nuve. Good to see you here on Instagram. We this is all just so organic, and it really has just emerged out of the need. And it wasn't even so much like we need to provide an alternative to graduate school. It was actually completely opposite. It was from the other end of saying we need to get more people out in the field who can help. And the cost of graduate school is so high. Is there something we can do to help stem the crisis of mental spiritual health without actually requiring a graduate school cost?
Right.
And then when you start looking under the hood, it's like, well, if we're really lean and scrappy and entrepreneurial about this, we can actually provide training that I think is even better than what happens in graduate school for less cost. Right. Because we're not trying to build a school. If you're not building a school, there's so many costs that you don't have to worry about.
Right.
And it's just really dialed into, okay, how do I get this one person to be well trained to do this one thing? And then that's the only thing I'm focused on. And then we build around that, and it works because, it turns out that like we're built to learn from each other. And when relationship is at the primary core point of the entire operation, it works better. And so that's what the CPMAP was born out of. But it's really interesting how timely it was. And I think, honestly, I think this is where the Holy Spirit has been with us from day one, because everything that we've done it's always, every move is always like a few years ahead of some major cultural shift.
Yeah. In ways that we couldn't really anticipate.
No, and it's not anticipating the shift, but it's listening to the need. And so when we were doing in-person practice, and then we had patients that had anxiety disorders, that it took more time to unravel their anxiety because of traveling to get to our office. And then you're like, well, there's this thing called Skype. Maybe we could try to use remote technology and actually still help these people. And it's like, I don't know, can we do that? Is that allowed? Is there a protocol for this? It's like, well, let's figure this out professionally. And then, a couple years later, it's like, oh, now we have COVID, and now remote therapy is a thing. And now people want to know, like, how did we do it 4 years ago when everybody was criticizing it as a new process?
You're like ready for COVID.
We were ready for COVID. And, and like little things like that keep happening. So here we are. It's like, let's actually just focus in on what matters, like taking people individually, really giving them an experience that they can learn.
Mm-hmm.
And here's Randy on YouTube as well. Hey, Randy, one of our students. Now, if any of the other students are listening right now, you guys can. Everybody's coming out of the woodwork. But we have if we focus on the critical thing that's most important, it moves in the right direction. Yeah. And that's what's been, I think, a real blessing for us.
And going full circle to the original question about institutions and why we believe in creating something that has an institutional dimension to it. We are literally called CatholicPsych Institute. It's that we are mission driven. We are trying to follow the Holy Spirit and his guidance as best we can, prayerfully. And he has in some ways built an ark for us and prepared us for what the world needs. But that could change at any moment. So we got to keep praying. Yeah. We can't rest on our laurels here, and we need other people to pray for us. But when we're saying, hey, don't listen to those institutions and put your faith in there, like, it can sound a little like but just listen to us, not them. It can sound very like salesy and marketing ish.
No,
But it's
it's
not.
always we're constantly reevaluating ourselves. Like it's always like, all right, where do we have to change? It's not just where does everybody else have to change. It's like where does anyone doing any kind of help for others has to change, including ourselves. So
Yeah.
we just I don't know. I think we're more agile. We move more quickly, listening to where the needs really are. But we got another student, Kristen. Hello on Facebook. This is fun. All right, so that's, at the moment, we're probably not starting a graduate school. That's, most likely in a graduate school, numbers are going down anyways, but we may contribute to graduate learning in some way, or maybe become more accepted, or somehow looking at ways that that's part of fulfilling our mission. We'll see.
Yeah. You gotta trust in the Holy Spirit, but if we ever do anything like that, you can bet your bottom dollar we're gonna do it differently than how it's been done. We're not going to contribute to this problem that's making people not want to go to graduate school anymore. You know?
That's for sure. All right, what else is on the list?
I was going to say not to just disparage all graduate school or undergraduate school. I mean, we have higher degrees, and we learned a tremendous amount from our program, and it's helped propel us to where we are. And there are some great graduate school programs, depending on like what you want to study. If you know what you want to do, you need that higher level of training. But just to put people through undergraduate and graduate school without any kind of careful discernment, that's the issue.
Well, no, that's definitely that. Like, here's a perfect example of this. It's like how many people, like maybe the numbers for students in graduate school should be going down. Like maybe that's a natural pruning process. That's a good thing. That if it was all about business and sales and just getting as many people in the door as possible, without any real consideration for what's happening to them after they leave,
right? Then
that's a real problem. And that's where our program, we're actually evaluating the program on a quarterly basis based on what our graduates are doing. Right. And it's like, oh, let's make a change in our internal process for our current students and future students based on what we just learned, because of where these graduates are going, able to go, what they're doing, what they're excited about, what they've learned, what they maybe haven't learned. And it changes everything. So I don't see that happening at the larger educational institutional scale of academia.
No, and here it is.
This is a very important pruning process that's happening. That's actually really good.
Yeah, those programs are like, here it is. Just take it or leave it. It's so hard for them to change because of the bureaucratic mess, which interferes with their own process.
Right.
Because there's so much money involved, because there's so many people involved, it makes it very challenging for those institutions to make the necessary changes to improve things for their students. They can a little bit here and there, but not the change that is needed at the pace that it's needed.
Yeah.
All right. Quickly, we got a minute here. Let's mention the clown show at the Vatican. It's no joke. Pope Francis will take the mic in front of over 100 comics, stand-up comedians, and humorists, including Americans Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Fallon, Jim Gaffigan, Conan O'Brien, Chris Rock, Tig Notaro. I don't know who that is. Tig Notaro and Whoopi Goldberg. They're all expected to take part. This June 14th meeting was organized by the Vatican's Dicastery for Culture and Education and Dicastery for Communication, and, quote, aims to establish a link between the Catholic Church and comic artists. The Vatican said the encounter intends to celebrate the beauty of human diversity.
Here's the thing. 1 second.
Hold on, wait. Let me finish this quote. Let me finish the quote. The Vatican said the encounter intends to celebrate the beauty of human diversity and promote a message of peace, love, and solidarity, and promises to be a meaningful moment of intercultural dialogue and sharing of joy and hope. Bring in those comics and let them hang out with the Pope. What do we think? Is this going to change the world?
I'm really just disappointed that Dave Chappelle is not on the list, or Cat Williams. I'm super disappointed in nominal Catholics carrying the Catholic banner who are not actually Catholic in the way that they think or speak or act. And I'd much rather have non-Catholics who can contribute to a conversation on a deeper human experience level without muddying the water of pretending to be Catholic. And
it's like yeah. You can be Catholic and believe this, but not so much.
right.
Like Stephen Colbert is not. I mean, he fashions himself a Catholic, but he doesn't follow all church
No,
teaching.
I mean Jim Gaffigan. I listened to his latest thing. It's like Jim Gaffigan in Las Vegas, and he's like, my wife is really the Catholic. He's like, I go with her, but he's like, when I'm traveling, I don't go to mass really. It's like, what?
Just
Like
so
you're a
disappointing.
Catholic, you're known as a Catholic comedian, and you're just going up there and you're like, yeah, Catholics don't really go to mass every week.
That's
Like, you
disappointing.
got to be kidding me. Like, this
Very
is not okay. So from a faith perspective, that's why I feel. I'd love to hear like Dave Chappelle talking about like how to communicate with people with transgender ideologies and stuff. It's like, that's like one of the most important, impactful things that can be said is coming from his stand-up routine, where he's like, I can have friends and I can love them because they're having a human experience and we can connect and relate at that level. Like, that's what should be at the Vatican.
Yes. And to top it all off, the last line of this article is Jesuit Father James Martin is also slated to attend. Martin is the former chaplain of the Colbert Report and appears to be the only clergy member listed among participants in the June 14th encounter. This is coming right after the Pope wrote a preamble to his book. He's big into LGBTQ movement.
We started.
but trust Jesus, everyone.
Top of the hour, we talked about going back to scripture after your news media. And bottom of the hour here, we are going back to trusting in Jesus and going back to your scripture to calm the anxieties and distress of your heart. Because we're not looking for our answers in this world.
No.
Our hope is in Jesus.
I wonder if it'll be funny. Do you think it'll be funny?
I can't imagine that it will be funny.
I would like to watch it. I really would like to watch it.
I don't even know what it is. Actually, I can do a Netflix special. It's like live from the Vatican.
On X.
All right, folks. Great to be back this week. Good seeing you.
Great to having you back.